Welcome back to the Micro Advice Podcast. Today, our spotlight topic is on how to effectively use AI to deliver a strong customer experience. To speak more in depth about this subject, we're here with Nate Jones, co-founder and head of innovation at Structurally, a conversational artificial intelligence that responds to, qualifies, and nurtures your online leads. Nate, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim.
So, Nate, incorporating AI to deliver a stronger CX is kind of a difficult topic to avoid these days. I hear a lot of leaders talking about this and attempting to embrace it in some way, shape, or form. But customers are still saying that they prefer to engage with a human being and not a bot or a machine or a script. So, Structurally has managed to bridge the gap here and help your customers deliver a strong CX while incorporating AI. So let's maybe dig in with how did you come up with Structurally and what does the platform really do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think regardless of if it's AI or human based, what we really set out to solve was salespeople in general struggle with follow up and qualification. Sales and marketing people, I'll say, struggle with that. When I started Structurally, we set out and myself and my co-founder, Andrew, interviewed a lot of different salespeople from real estate, mortgage, insurance, software, all over the board. And the consistent topic was, well, I really don't like following up with my leads. I really don't like the mundane behind the scene task. Salespeople love to be face to face. They love to help people solve problems. They love to be really close to the close, which makes sense because they're usually commission based. And the rest of that work behind the scenes is super important because that's where the money is usually made. It just takes a lot of time. That's probably where they could spend their entire life. And it's just not a good match to their, personality type, really. And so we kept hearing that problem time and time again that I struggle with follow up. Please help with that. So we set out to build Structurally, where it follows up, engages, and qualifies leads over messaging, and has two-way conversations with leads, passes them off to sales reps as a qualified lead or disqualified lead, so they can close them. And we set out to build it with AI because we've seen, human call centers have been around for 20 plus years, and no one set out to solve it with AI at that time when we started about 5 years ago. And, fast forward today, that's still what we're focused on, regardless of if it's a AI conversation or human conversation. We don't really care so much that it is AI. What we care about is having human level, sales rep worthy level conversations with, people's most valuable asset, their leads.
Okay, interesting. So whenever we initially spoke, you had mentioned you started with the real estate industry.
Yeah.
How did you arrive at that industry and are you expanding into others?
Yeah. So we did actually hear a lot of that same problem resonating probably most loudly with real estate agents beginning when we started Structurally. So it was just constantly, realtors are especially commission based, just since like their whole income pretty much comes from sales that they generate, even more so than a lot of other markets. So I think they feel it the most. What's interesting about the real estate industry is it's very, from a lead generation perspective, it's very, I'll say, like commoditized. Most real estate agents are paying Zillow, Realtor.com, the big national portals or other companies to do their lead generation for them. And all of the leads are pretty similar. They're looking for a house. They're usually pretty early. They're looking to sell or rent. And it's kind of just like, from a lead generation perspective, very done and proven process. But agents still really struggled with that follow-up piece. And that's where we honed in on. That worked really well for us. We've seen a really strong adoption of our product in real estate and mortgage since they work so close together. But really early on, we said we built the product in a very general way to say this is a problem that all sales and marketing teams face, and that's where we're really focused on.
Fascinating. Have you expanded into other industries and have you seen
Yep.
one maybe use it more effectively than another?
Yeah. So industries, our ideal customer profile that we've seen is industries or just businesses that have a lot of leads, those leads are generated digitally, and there's a high touch sales process. Usually those are the three traits that we typically look for. And obviously real estate fits the bill very well there. So does mortgage, so does insurance. We have customers kind of in all those industries, financial services, even software. We have different software, SaaS companies, enterprise companies using our product today, and including ourselves. We're a software company. We use our own product to sell our product. That was we were one of our first non-real estate customers. And that really kind of, turned the light bulb for us to say, we're also a sales team who generates leads that need to be qualified. So, there's plenty of other companies like us.
Okay, so, in this day and age, now that we have, that understanding, there's a ton of buzz around CX or customer experience and empathy and leading with empathy when it comes to engaging with customers or buyers or potential customers. So, how can AI be employed to do this effectively? Because it goes back to that, that initial point we made where I hear some customers saying like, gosh, I just want to talk to a human. I never want to deal with a bot. So like, how can companies use AI to effectively meet the need of both the company while still delivering a strong CX?
You're spot on. And we sometimes, like you heard me mention earlier, don't even like saying that we're an AI company because it's so buzzword heavy right now. Everyone has some form of AI.
That's true. I know it really is buzzword heavy.
I know.
Everything's
and
AI. Yeah.
I really do like very carefully use that word. And I want that to be clear for sure, that we're not just throwing it out there just because. We're throwing it out there because there are benefits to AI. First of all, like we've built all of our AI in-house for this specific need. We've seen over 5 million conversations. We have tens of millions of hand-labeled messages from our customers that are feeding our models every day. And what we set out to do from day one was to make our AI indistinguishable from human. We set out, and real estate is really actually one of the hardest industries, in my opinion, that we could have started in, because especially when people are buying or selling a house, it's super emotional. Like it's your biggest purchase of your life usually. And a lot of people joke that there's the 3Ds of real estate: death, divorce, disease, that people move because of. And those are all like bad things. They're pretty, empathetic human things that you have to get right. And the last thing that these people would want to do is feel like they're talking to a robot when they just said, hey, I'm going through a divorce. I need to sell my house. Oh, okay. Carry on. Tell me more. Something like that, right? So that happens so much in real estate that from day one, we said, this will be an indistinguishable from human AI. And I'm super proud that I feel like we've accomplished that. We look at over the 5 million conversations that we've had. We actually have a really, kind of statistical way that we look at how many of what percent of our conversations do people actually believe they're not talking to a human? What can they see through? And we've measured 0.1%. 0.1% of all of our 5 million conversations have said something like, oh, are you a bot? Are you a robot? They've kind of saw through it, but that's still really strong. We want that to be 0, but that is our goal. And I think for everyone listening, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that we're an AI company. All that matters is having a very empathetic, human-like conversation, whether it's yourself doing it or a different product doing it. So when someone says, I'm going through a divorce, I'm sorry to hear that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Things like that go a long way.
Okay, that's fascinating. How I would just say, what in the customers you've dealt with so far, have you noticed a particular size of customer that adopts this type of tool? Basically, from startup to very mature company, when do you see these type of tools, needing to be adopted? Not necessarily being adopted, but needing to be adopted by a particular customer of yours to grow?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I hate to say it, but we've seen people from across the board. We have brand new startups, one person sales teams, all the way to Fortune 200 companies who use us today. On the huge enterprise end, what's actually really interesting is we have a couple like large national portals that are using the product. They're typically like lead generation companies who just see a huge influx of leads. I mean, hundreds of thousands a day, pretty much hundreds of thousands of leads they generate a day. And what we found is really like our problem is simply just highlighted for them, but it's still the same problem that we're solving for small teams. I have all these leads, I can't qualify them, so I'm just going to let them sit and essentially die in my database. That is the kind of mantra that a lot of CRMs kind of like get you on. We love working with CRMs like HubSpot and Salesforce, but really they make money the more leads that you have in their product, and they're okay with that. We're okay with that too, but we want to help you actually make the most of those leads by scrubbing them. So, you probably have lists of leads that you haven't talked to in forever, or that don't have the amount of messages or attention they deserve. And I think that's a problem for businesses of all size, no matter if it's a brand new startup or a Fortune 200 company.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I love the way that you stated that, of trying to help people to make the most of the leads and get the most value from it. Have you seen any drawbacks? So I think you made it crystal clear about your kind of vision for using or building artificial intelligence. Have you seen any drawbacks from companies that employ the tools that maybe you can advise the listeners here to avoid or to watch out for so that they don't fall into the same traps that you may have seen?
Really fun question. I'm glad you asked, because this is kind of a little passion project of mine. I think there's this huge, obviously we've talked about AI being a massive buzzword, but it's just increasingly becoming more of a buzzword. But there's a huge new trend around like a model in particular called GPT-3. It's a model developed by OpenAI. It is the world's largest natural language processing conversational AI model. You can do whatever you want. It can write a book for you. It can write blogs for you. I'm sure almost everyone here has heard of some company like Copy.ai is a huge one that is using some form of this GPT-3 model. And really what it does is you can tweak it to use to do whatever you want. You can tweak it to write a blog for you, write social posts for you. And that is what I would call, and many would call, as like generative AI. It's literally writing content for you in some kind. Many people can make chatbots and other conversational AI with it as well. But what the issue there is, you don't actually know what it's going to say next. Because it's generative AI, you're not in control of what it will say next, other than the example data that you fed it and the example data it's been trained on, which is the open internet. It's been trained on the text of the world's internet. That's not a safe place. The internet's not a good place to use as training data. And as such, you're going to get a lot of weird messages. So with our product, we took a stance to say, we will allow you to customize our responses. We call it stochastic structured messages. So we don't know exactly what our AI is going to say next, because it's one of many random templates essentially that you've customized, but you're in control. So if someone asks about like your pricing, Structurally's pricing is way different than Salesforce's pricing. And we give you the ability to customize that answer through our product, rather than having some generative AI make something up on the fly. So I would say the drawbacks, there's huge pros of generative AI, but there are way bigger drawbacks that you have to be really careful of when you're thinking about adding AI of some kind.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that, because I feel like because it's such a buzzword and there's so much pressure to adopt these automated tools for whatever, providing a better CX or saving money or generating more revenue, there's some drawbacks that aren't really fully known and that companies might fall into. So that was really helpful. So Nate, final questions for today, and it's a little future looking, totally your opinion. So be honest. If you look out over maybe like 5 or so years, I know it's tough to predict beyond that, where do you see these type of tools going to drive a better customer experience, or if nothing else, at least improving customer communication?
Yeah. So I kind of will go back on my word that I just said, like regarding specifically generative AI and GPT-3, but those tools are the future. I can't deny it. Like every one of these companies that's spinning up on top of this huge, the world's largest AI tool, essentially, that we've ever seen that's publicly available, those companies are doing things that probably OpenAI never thought their tool could ever be put to use for. And I can't even begin to think what 5 years from now, maybe we're on GPT-5 rather than GPT-3, what that's going to do for the conversational world. I can't even imagine to, guess. I can't venture a guess what that will be. But I do think as a whole, those companies and other generative AI tools, conversational AI tools, are going to go so far as what I'll just say, they will do the work for you. And I think that's the promise of AI in a nutshell. Is it's not necessarily to, like everyone gets scared about it replacing jobs. It is here to augment the role of workers. It's going to take the mundane tasks of following up with and qualifying leads. Can't tell you how many times our product has seen "you leave me alone." That is not something that we as humans like to do. And that's what AI excels at doing. And I think that AI will continue to do the mundane tasks to free up employees, workers of all kinds to do what they excel at, the things that are almost irreplaceable by human. So like sales reps, CS reps, revenue leaders, they will actually be able to spend more time with humans solving the very things that only humans can solve, while AI solves the rest.
Okay, that's interesting. That is a really interesting outlook. Let's log this now and then track it over time and circle back around 5 years and say, hey, that happened or it didn't. But no, that's really interesting perspective. Thank you, Nate. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. This has been incredible.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And thank you all for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like this, leave a comment, or as always, reach out to me via LinkedIn if you have any thoughts for a CX podcast. Have a great week. Thanks again. Bye-bye.